Morning. One of my earliest videos, I looked back almost 3 years ago, and I talked about the Blue Buddha. And I gave a little bit of the story about how the Blue Buddha approached me on some level. The healing Buddha, the medicine Buddha, the Blue Buddha approached me on some level. Lucid dreaming, sleeping, awake. It doesn't matter, it's equally legitimate as far as I'm concerned. But the Blue Buddha came to me and explained a few things. That the Blue Buddha sat between the heart chakra and the throat chakra here. And he was telling me that eventually that there would be another center here, up above again the heart chakra and the throat chakra, the green of the heart and the blue of the throat. So I asked him, I said, well, the color for the throat chakra is blue. So it seems like it's a perfect match that the Blue Buddha would come from the blue chakra. And he told me, I use the pronoun he, but no pronoun is applicable, or anyone is equally applicable. Have it your way. But this entity, the Blue Buddha, said that the color of this new chakra would be somewhere between blue and green. Green and blue. Somewhere between. And I don't know how colors work, because sometimes I look, but I think if you made... I don't know what color you get. I have to check it. What you get if you mix blue and green? But it's a new color. Anyway, this is where he resides. And he asked me if he could come and take up residence in me. And I was quite honored, actually. I said, certainly. And quite frankly, but quite honestly, I forgot about this. I couldn't really notice his presence other than what he said, that my words would heal. There's different kinds of healer, and if I considered myself any kind of healer, it's not a hands-on touching healer like many. I always took it as more of a psychological, a mental healing, that somehow my words could bring some peace to a tortured soul, or a soul that needed to hear some healing words. But the Blue Buddha told me was that it was the sound coming out of my mouth that was more important than whatever words my lips and tongue formed. The sound coming up would be healing to those that were open or willing to be healed, to accept the words. And what I really took away from this was not some ego thing, because remember, I was in the process of, I'd already pretty much dismantled the mental psychological ego, and was in the process of dealing with the more insidious, as I mentioned, spiritual ego. And this, having the Blue Buddha address me, if I wasn't careful, would just add to the hubris, just add to the accumulation of my specialness. Oh, the Blue Buddha must be special. No, not at all. Extraordinarily ordinary. How's that? Extremely ordinary. But what I did take away from this is that to be aware of how I use my voice, to be aware that it can be a tool. So I'm mentioning this again because recently I've been working on a book. That was the last. I have to check the date, but I know the time was 3:33. Unbeknownst to me, when I started, I just happened to glance up and see that repeating patterns of 3, and this made me feel that my timing was very appropriate. I've had a book or 2 or 3 in me for many years, but somehow I just couldn't sit down and do it. I wasn't ready. And Colleen, my better half, bless her. When I started this YouTube, I had been considering a YouTube. Maybe this was a good forum for me because I love to talk. And it's not difficult, as it is for many people, it's not difficult to watch myself talk. In fact, I get some comfort from it. But she mentioned to me, I had said a few times I should start a YouTube. And she mentioned one day, you should start a YouTube. Well, I went in there in my room, my meditation room, and started immediately. And just as I can't remember verbalize, I can't remember saying it out that I want to write a book. But a few days ago, she said to me, you should write a book. And again, she's plugged in. She knows the timing much better than I do. And I started a book, and there you see the title. Everything was flowing easily, as it should. No writer's block, no struggling. The words just flowed. And I have my Pages, the word processor that I'm using from Apple. I have it on my phone and I have it on my iPad, so that I get inspired in the middle of the night. I wake up at that 3:33, somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m. And it happens daily. And a lot of times I'm waking up by inspiration, but I have one of the other nearby so that I can type in because no matter how many times I repeat it in my head and say, remember that, excuse me, in the process of going back to sleep, I lost it. So now I have this habit. And then sometimes I've actually gotten up, began writing. The spirit was moved me, so they should say. So the name that I came up with, which is still I'm working on as I realized today, was Rewind. Remembering remembering, let's see. Sorry. I should have this, but it's just eluding me, but it's real easy to pull up here. Uh-huh. There it is. Rewinding. Going backwards to go forwards. Or going backward to go forward. Going backwards to go forward. Anyway, sorry, I'm wasting your time, but this is how my process works. And today, it came to me that rewind. Somehow that shouldn't be the title. How about Blue Healer? I'm mulling this over anyway. I'm sharing it with you. And that led me to going back and renewing my story, retelling my story of the Blue Buddha and the effects that it had on me. And while I'm talking about the Blue Buddha, I'd like to talk with the other two Buddhas that are always on my right and my left. And spirit guides, you might call them. I tend to see things from an Eastern slant, a Buddhist slant, and I call them my Buddhas, my spirit guides, my voices, my angels. You name it. Doesn't matter what they're called, but they're there. And they're tricky because I could say that Milafo, I'm sorry. Sorry, Milafo, sorry. Damo is on my right, and Roger Bacon, a 13th century Franciscan monk, is on my left. But they switch up on me. Right here, Francis is here, Francis Bacon. And I don't know his lineage, I don't know his background. I know about this particular incarnation, and because I have a close connection to the time, his time, 13th, 14th century, I have a close connection to cloistering, to being a monk in a Catholic monk, a Franciscan monk, in a reclusive, like they did in those days, and living with. And Colleen has mentioned quite interestingly, this is my better half. She's mentioned quite interestingly that she believes that we were monks together. And that makes perfect sense because gender for reincarnation isn't particularly important. I suspect that it's somewhere equal, male and female voices, the yin and the yang, connecting in the Tai Chi. That beautiful symbol, Eastern symbol of the half black, half white with a dot of each respective color within. But so anyway, Roger and Damo, he's the first patriarch in Chan Buddhism. He's the 27th or 28th. I have to go look again. Let's get that 26, 27, 28, or in the lineage of Indian and of the Hindu Buddha lineage, starting with the man himself, the Buddha, and 25th, 26th, 27th. Anyway, Dhammo, Bodhidharma went from India to China and introduced, he started the tradition that was to foster the martial arts, Shaolin, because in the time he found that the monks were in such bad condition physically, and he felt that you had to nurture the body. Everything had to be balanced and taken care of, and attention had to be paid. So he started this tradition of martial arts that still remains to this day. Interesting. It might be the lasting legacy of his time, but for me, it's alive and well. Damo, the stern one, And to give a little history, when I was first trying to identify, I mean, I felt their presence there forever. And when I was first trying to identify them, somehow I always pictured Milafo, the smiling, the laughing Buddha, as more inherent, a better role model for me, because I tend to be stern. I have to remember to smile. That's why I named it Zen with a Smile. It's for the simple reason. Well, Zen with a frown just wouldn't work, would it? But it's more appropriate. It's more apropos to the presence that I usually project. I have to consciously work on that, changing that. But when I see his stern countenance, the stern Dhammo, so, well, that's too much to me. I got to look to the opposite, right? But I remember my teacher telling me, he says, no, pay attention to Dhammo. He told me at that time that Milafo and himself were working together, and I needed to. Dhammo was the one willing to work with me. And I must say, by no means does Dhammo belong to me. Dhammo can be a million places, and Roger Bacon has every capability, because he is a Buddha himself, has every capability to be everywhere at the same time, simultaneously. So take a look, try to figure out. It took me a long time of questioning and feeling and sleeping and dreaming to come up with. But the funny thing about each of them is very interesting, and polar opposites, as it turns out. Dhammo, I see him in the guise of a court jester. A middle-aged court jester who was gifted and entertained the king. And if he got less than entertaining, well, he was simply disposed of and replaced. So they had to work. It was an art. They had to work at their art. So here's Milafo, Dhammo, see? Here's Dhammo, Bodhidharma, somersaulting, and constantly talking. He never stops somersaulting. That's how he travels when we're walking. We do a lot of walking. The three of us do a lot of walking together, and he's always somersaulting, tumbling, and he's small. And when he gets in a little ball to somersault, it's even smaller, but he's a little ball of non-stop talking, energetic. He can somersault as fast as we can briskly stroll. And here on the other side, well, they switch up. I told you, they're sneaky little buggers. Roger is probably almost 7 feet tall. And the first foot of it, he has no feet. It took me a long time to realize he has no feet. He floats a foot off the ground. And he has covered by his brown Franciscan monk, and the hood, whatever they call it, the hood is pulled far out, so it's just a shadow. And he was this image, this shadow, was the kind of introduction that I'll talk more about in my shadow world talks. He's totally a shadow. Shadow, just you can't see any features. So he's giant and silent. He never talks. He lives in complete and total silence. So I got Chatty Cathy somersaulting over here, and the silent shadow, the giant shadow, the floating shadow, and he just moves effortlessly, with as little effort as it takes Dhammo to somersault. But if you listen closely, this is not just incessant chatter. It's not the monkey mind. This is solid wisdom, nonstop. When you can catch bits and pieces, it's startling in its intensity, its relevance, its beauty, its truth, its love. We're walking along and something sinks in and I just stop. And they stop right with me, Roger, just floating, and Damo, somersaulting without going forward right next to me. And I just soak it in. I said, wow. Wow. Well, these are my spirit guides. These are my Buddhas. So now I was to have a third Buddha come to me well into this is after permanent awakening. I must have been 66, probably, or just turning 66. I think 65. 65 is memorable because that's when I had my open heart surgery. 65 years old. So previous to open heart surgery, I guess I really needed them, huh? Is when I became really aware. I always knew that they were there, but it became clearer. I could visualize, I could see them, whereas before, I guess I wasn't ready or able to see them any earlier. But I wanted to share this experience again because I'm in this, maybe a little bit of nostalgia. I'm into looking back on how this has gone, because I'm seeing what parts of it I can use in the book that I'm working on. My book, other than just thinking of revising the name, I've started with just what I call humble beginnings, and it's a chance for me to relive memories that I've learned to go past. I've learned that by forgetting these memories, that memories are an obstacle to clarity. Memories can be an obstacle to clarity, but memories, like everything else, can be things of beauty. So it's been interesting to go back to the early childhood and really dig around in the memories because, as I've said before, we forget nothing. We know right now everything that ever was, everything that ever will be, and everything that ever has been. This is within us. We can readily, or maybe not so readily, but we can access through discipline, through serendipity, through timeliness, through need, through desire, through longing, all these things that you have to take another look. There's good parts to desire, there's good parts to longing, just as equally that dualism raises its ugly head again until we see that it's one and the same. We see the unity. We take the dualism, examine it, and merge it into the all. But these things are available. So it's really been fun. I have mentioned before that my brother, 2-year younger brother, Jim, is 5 minutes away from me living. And since I've been working on this the last few weeks, it's fun to sit down with him and get another take on some of these early views. We can kind of flesh it out and we can see the different perspectives. I can see my biases by listening to his biases. So, but all of it was told, all of it shared with an intent. And what became really aware was my father, who died when I'm 4. before I turned 4. The Christmas before I turned 4 in March. And thinking about him and noticing that essentially he was a shadow. When I went back to these early memories, because he wasn't there, he was working a distance away from the family, and I seldom saw him, and when I did, it was a joyous time, as I can remember being extremely happy. But somewhere before his passing, from my point of view, he started going to the shadow world, where he would remain after his death for my whole life. It's part of the shadow world. And it's dawning on me now that this process, this assigning, this journey to the shadow world, what I call the shadow world, because they're not clear, they're not identified. It's like a shadow. It's like my Roger Bacon, my tall 7-foot monk, Franciscan monk. The shadow world. And as I'm sharing that with you, I thinking that the shadow world should be the name of my book. Wow, really wonderful. Thank you, all of that. Anyone, all of you, one or two, or who's ever out there. If anyone, thanks for that feedback, because I got it. I was going to call it the Blue Healer. Nah, that's too presumptuous. But the shadow world. And I'm going to work on going backwards to go forwards, because that was connecting to rewind somehow. I think I'll go back to what started this all. Why not? What started this all was the concept of forgetting to remember. Forgetting so that you were able to remember. When we're born, we forgot what we've always known, just to give us a decent shot, a clear shot at working on whatever it was that we needed to come back to work on. We'd be overwhelmed if we were burdened with everything that we remembered. It would interfere with the task at hand, which is to deal with some kind of karmic issue so that you can put it behind you and become karma free and continue to be karma free, because the simple act of breathing in and breathing out and walking on Mother Earth, we accumulate karma, unavoidable. I told you that I was a vegetarian for 33 years until my spirit told me that I needed protein, and now I'm on a very high protein diet, and my health is relatively better than it would have because I was a terrible vegetarian. I don't like vegetables much, so I ate a lot of cheese and bread. What kind of vegetarian? I suspect I wasn't the only one, but I ate a lot of bread and cheese and was fat. 30 pounds heavier, 40 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I had already excuses. Oh, I'm carrying this weight so I can protect myself. Well, there's really nothing to protect yourself from. Or if there was, it's beyond our ability to protect ourselves much. We're just at the whim of, just at the happenstance of events. Thinking that we can protect ourselves somehow is an exercise in futility, because no matter what, we're naked and exposed to what's happening around us. All that we can do is work on how we handle, how we personally without a person, how we gain equanimity, how we're the same in any sequence of events. Happy times, sad times, equanimity, the ability to be like a rock that's impervious to the world. I mean, you notice, but it doesn't change your course. It's like a ship that can fight the wind and fight the currents and fight the tides and keep its direction on its way to a safe harbor refuge, which is within ourselves, which offers all the joys of oneness, infinite compassion, infinite love, infinite understanding. All these are available in your safe harbor. So the shadow world, I'm going to be working more on fleshing this out, giving the shadows more substance, or at least understanding what the process was. Why did my dad sort of slide into this nefarious shadow world while he was still walking the earth from the perspective of a 3-year-old little boy? So looking to understand the shadow world, what it means, what it represents, it's just my newest assignment, and I just assigned myself. I just gave it to myself as I'm sharing with you, on this 33-minute video. So the book, The Shadow World, or Shadowland, remembering what you have forgotten. Shadow World, Shadowland, the shadows. It'd be interesting because mostly, I think if I say shadow, it kind of has a negative connotation, but I see it like our shadow that's attached to us. It's us without the ego. So maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. The shadow that's connected to us, that we share, that I seek to understand.